truth.
What do we think about carving up the nation geographically according to value sets and letting people move wherever they want? Carve it all up and you can move to the area that you think best suits your values. I think that this idea is, one, way too complicated to practically occur. So the notion that people would choose to live based on their social values has a bunch of implications that have to pre-exist. It implies basically that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, are covered and accounted for no matter where they go. That currently isn't really the case, and it's not something that I would anticipate is going to happen. We know for a fact that if the United States were divided up into all of these, little countries or whatever, that we would still have to work with other areas of the country in order to be able to provide basic services, public utilities.
Amazingly true, by the way. It's one of the many gaping holes, by way of the practical, that this thought experiment has. Some of these things, I suppose, you could hatch some ideas as to how to solve them. For example, there's nothing to keep different sections of the country from doing business with each other, trading with each other. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily see that as something that couldn't happen. It's not only that certain areas of the country would need to import food and import water and all the ping-ponging of trade that we deal with every day. The theory presents a problem in this respect too. What if you're trained to be an engineer? What if you're trained to be a scientist? What if you're trained to be a food chemist? So on and so forth. Your professional skills are going to dictate, where you need to be. There's so many things like that. I get that. I think there are people that would have to live under the tent of ideas that don't necessarily want to, for various reasons, economic reasons, and that's where it all breaks down. What it would do, though, is give you an option if you did want it. To some extent you can now. I suppose you could still, if you wanted, a more conservative fiscal kind of approach, you could move to Texas. If you wanted a leftist approach, you could move to California. If you want some sort of hybrid, you could maybe move to the Northeast, Connecticut, and so on and so forth. You shine a light on a very obvious, ugly underbelly to this thought experiment.
And keep people entertained so that they're not bored, and you will have complacent herds
We agree.
forever.
We
I
agree.
just don't think what's interesting to me is that the problem that Brock perceives being identity politics, basically, I think identity politics is the solution, not the problem.
This is fascinating.
And I think that it is being fine-tuned towards a global recipe. Super elite, the people who do control the industry of the globe are basically fine-tuning this recipe in which everybody else can exist. We can exist in relatively happy lives, and as long as we are entertained and whatnot, then we'll just continue to chug along.
Okay, this offering, I think, is your gold nugget in your video. I really agree with this. At first glance, the average person is going to be like tinfoil conspiracy theory. But I think with some real thought, there's a lot of evidence to support this claim. And it seems as though what you're saying is there are these evil elites that are twisting their evil gnarly mustaches and just burning $100 bills to write their cigars. To some extent, it's probably more skull and bonesy than that, but I think that's actually probably true. I think it is true that the super elite are kind of crafting this sort of cocktail, if you will, in the chemistry lab, where how can we sort of get these? How do we get these plebeians, these serfs, this sea of just less thans? And that's really honestly how I think they see us. Right and left alike. I think the establishment power, you call them whatever you want, the super elite, I like that term, whatever it is, I do think they're how much Xbox, how much Walmart, how much big bag of potato chips, how much television, how much streaming Netflix, how much stupidity can we sort of throw into if they throw too much complacency in, that might not be good. If they throw too much prosperity in to where people are climbing, the crabs are climbing out of the can, so to speak. Oh, we can't have that. If that's what you're offering up as an idea, I think that's super thoughtful. I actually think there's a lot more truth in that than not. I think that's extremely thoughtful.
basically dividing the country up in that way is antithetical to what the country stands for. America is the melting pot. And if we let bad actors basically destroy that concept, we're basically going to let them win. You know, the whole, they win if we do this. In this case, yeah, they will win. They do win. Because they successfully divide the country, we will fall. With identity politics, so this divisiveness is not happening organically. And going back to something else that Brock said, that Blair White also mentioned on Twitter, there was a time in America, I would say back like in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere like to around the mid 2000s, there's a point in our history where we were doing pretty good. You know, and it's how Barack Obama got elected. I mean, we were at a point where we were like, man, we can elect a black president. We were doing pretty good.
Okay, this was the most fascinating part of your video to me because I completely agree. I think the quantum leap of race relations in America, and I would place it right where you did. I would place it mid-90s to maybe mid-2000s. It was something to be proud of. Riddled with problems, always will be problems. There's always going to be bad actors. I like that term as well. When you're a reasonable person and you understand that the human being is flawed, that there's going to be evil in people's hearts, there's nothing you can do about some of that stuff. There's always going to be bigotry. There's always going to be hatred. There's always going to be prejudice. But by way of the culture, what the culture will accept, what's norms, opportunities, I think we were, if not in a really, really good place, certainly on the trajectory of a really, really good place. And my opinion is that that was deemed as a threat to the powerful. It seems as though at that point in time, you would speak of racism within certain confines. These terms meant something. They weren't hollowed out. And the fangs weren't removed from these terms when I was growing up like they are now. They're just bandied about. They're thrown about just to harm somebody's reputation. They don't mean anything. Back then, they did mean something. And it seemed to me like the watermarks and the goals of race relations, as they were met, the goalposts got moved. That's how I perceive it. So that's one of the interesting things about having conversations about race relations, socioeconomics, class warfare, gender discussions. There isn't a solution in that recipe, right? It's just the grievance. Well, if there's no solution, if there's nowhere to go, if there's no way to measure one's success, then they're just dangling the grievance. And that's what I think they're doing. I think the powerful are doing that. I think the race pimps and the race racketeers and all these people that profit from all this stuff, I think that's what they're doing. They're dangling the grievance to exploit it, to divide people, to rile people up, to mobilize them for political power. I think the Democrat Party just reeks of doing that. I think their entire base is just carved up constituency groups that they just anger and inflame to drive them to the polls. The problem is a 1%, 75-year-old white woman of extreme privilege is not able to really sell the little guy, which is why Hillary Clinton got her butt handed to her in the election. All these little carved up grievance groups didn't really buy what she was selling. That being said, yeah, that's what I think race relations is. I think there is no arrival, right? There is no place in which we're like, okay, right? This is about as even footing as everybody can get. So just go make something of yourself. Go wield your God-given gifts. Go innovate. Go climb the ladder of opportunity. That's not the goal. Can we at least entertain, even if you don't agree with me, can we at least entertain that the goal of race relations isn't to bring us into one accord or to have conversation or to open our minds. That's not the goal. The goal is to divide us. The whole race racketeering nonsense, you're being played. You're being played. You're good-hearted. You're good-intentioned. You care about your fellow man. That's all admirable. Should be lauded. But they're playing on that. They're playing on that. Most good people, myself, you, that we want that. That's the goal. That's not their goal. That should just be known. That's what I really think about that.
I have some liberal friends whom I agree with on much, because I am very liberal. But there are some anti-establishment conservative friends that I agree with more on certain issues than my establishment Democrat friends. Like, I have establishment Democrat friends that hate Bernie Sanders, and they're like, oh, the status quo is great, and we're going to keep it like it is, and Obama is God, and it's like, I don't feel that way. and I disagree with them just as drastically as I disagree with my classic conservative friends.
It's thoughtful stuff. We agree. I also agree the two-party system's killing us. I'm with you. I do not by any means walk lockstep with conservatism. For example, I think they should legalize drugs. I have a huge problem with the federal profiting of our prison systems. I'm very, very leery, for different reasons than liberals espouse, but I'm very, very leery of a big, huge footprint police state. I think the tip of the spear of all totalitarian regimes is the police. The SS were the ex-police in Germany. There's a lot of reasons to be suspect of that. I'm very libertarian, but I disagree with them on foreign policy. So, I mean, there is just this hodgepodge that you speak of, and I think that's very true. And actually, a thoughtful person should always engage the idea. It shouldn't just be this, like, download that you take in, like a software upgrade, and then you just go along to get along. It's far too much of that, I think. And that's somewhat of the problem, because now we carve up into teams. It's like, as long as that team thinks it, I don't think it. For example, a mystifying thing, and it can only be explained by like partisan line drawing, is voter IDs. Look, the left has convinced a large part of their base that these are racist. They know voter IDs aren't racist. They're just doing this because they see a power end game in this. And it's like the average person can just think for 5 seconds. Showing an ID when you vote, just like showing an ID when you go to a bar, or showing an ID to pick up a set of tickets at will call at a stadium, or showing ID for any myriad of things in society. Of course, it's not racist. It's a preposterous notion. They don't want voter IDs because there's shenanigans going on with the voter logs. Even if you're a Democrat, you should be able to see this is ridiculous. Democrats are blowing smoke up my butt. I'm going to reject this, but they don't, because it's a party thing, right? My party, my side says voter IDs are racist, so voter IDs are racist without even thinking about that. There's vice versa issues like that. So it's unhealthy for the body politic. It's exactly why I think we're heading towards the divide and the civil war, because this kind of nuance doesn't exist anymore.
Ideally, we could have different states that did divide it up. I get what Paul's saying, and I get that, like to me, the concept of borders is crazy. Borders, right? Like, we're drawing lines on this damn rock.
I don't agree with you on that. I would say a free people get to decide that. What was once beautiful about the United States of America is we understood that all peoples bring something to the melting pot, and there's room for that. But these are the values. These are American values. Well, so for example, you can come from Venezuela if you want American values, if you want to climb the ladder of opportunity, if you want to become an actual American. This is where it breaks down. You don't get to come from Venezuela and then helicopter in all your socialist hellhole values into the United States of America. That's not assimilation. That's not what it means to be a melting pot. And that's where it's broken down. The left has equated all these different ideas of governance as American values when they're not. American values, e pluribus unum, in God we trust, free enterprise, capitalism. These things are what elevated America to the dominance that it is. Of this, there is really no debate except for among intellectually dishonest professors. Oh, yeah, it is true. All people groups, all religions, all of them coming, adding, bringing ideas, foods, cultural influences, all awesome, but they need to be under the tent of American values, which, by the way, get out your coin. They're all on your coin. Liberty, pluribus unum, in God we trust. These things were the framework of America, and the proof's in the prosperity pudding. There is latitude, there's elasticity, there's flexibility within these values. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because you like, Hugo Chavez. But it's fascinating to me that South Americans, for example, and I have a lot of South American friends. I love South American culture. They have wonderful family values. They come here because their nation states are socioeconomic hellholes. They're socioeconomic hellholes because they're dictated by socialist, big state, elitist corruption. And then they vote for big state, elitist, socialist ideas. Effectively will turn their life raft of a nation, which is America, into a socialist hellhole, poverty-driven. I've always found that irony just breathtaking.
So let's say we did divide up, okay? And let's say I lived in California and you lived in Texas. And in California, I paid higher taxes and we had free healthcare. And in Texas, you had private healthcare and you had low taxes. I can love my friends from Texas, but not choose to live there, right? Like, just because we want different things from life doesn't mean that we have to hate each other, or that's not what it seems like to me. To me, I feel like if we could do this, basically would mean that like people could have the life that they want. You go to a state where weed is legal, go to a state where abortion is legal, go to a state where gay marriage is legal, go to a state where transgender healthcare is far easier to access.
See, this is where these conversations get interesting, because I agree with you. I don't necessarily think that just because you would divide up by way of values, that you certainly wouldn't have to villainize the other person. I certainly wouldn't do that. And you wouldn't have to hate somebody else. I mean, I disagree with Paul in this respect as well. I've had a career professionally in the media, and then I had a career as a musician. So the vast majority of my friends are far, far left, far further left than most of you. And I have vibrant friendships with them, great conversations with them. We break bread, the whole nine. So it doesn't mean that because we divide up by way of values that that all aspects of humanity are going to be divided up. There was a time when America could coexist, even though there were differences, because the vast majority of those differences were fringe differences, big tenets the American people agreed on, by and large. I mean, there's always this ebb and flow, but by and large, that's not true today. We want two totally different things. For example, when we speak of the Constitution, a person like myself, a conservative like myself, I read the Constitution as it is, valued as a document. I think it has a legacy of success. I accept it. Some of the leftist says they speak of this as huffing and puffing and breathing and expanding. What does that mean? Whenever they don't like what it says, they want to change it. Because why? They see themselves as gods. And how do they undermine the Constitution's validity? They undermine the people who wrote it. They tell you these people were white. They tell you these people owned slaves. They tell you these people didn't share lockstep your 2017 social agenda. So therefore, they're horrible people. They're villains. Why should we be tethered to such an archaic, dusty document? Let's burn it. Let's invent our own. You see what I mean? Different values. We want different things. We don't want the same things, not because we're horrible people, not because you're a horrible person or I'm a horrible person, but because we both want good ends and we don't think those means are going to work. And all I'm trying to do, and I mean this, is just keep blood from spilling in the streets. Because what happens when this contention continues to grow and continue to put on a show like, we're all in it together, red, white, and blue, Mountain Dew? No, we're not. We're not. We want two different things. I don't think those people are evil people. I just think they're wrong. Great conversation. Love the idea of pulling up a chair at the table of ideas and exchanging them freely, openly. I love that that's your goal. Stay true to it. Thanks again.
The news.
The news.
The news.
Behind the statist media lies.